Okay. First I'm going to talk to you about, my next book is on detoxification. So I've been experimenting with detoxification. And because a lot of people talk about going gung-ho and doing a lot, I want to caution you on it because 2 months ago I decided to do an intense detoxification and do the limit with it. Now over the years, the
Wayne is his name.
Okay.
Wayne.
Yeah. The only thing that what I do when I detoxify is you create fermentations, which are bacteria cause fermentation. Bacteria are in the foods before you cook them. When you cook them, the bacteria is out. All the bacteria, all the enzymes, vitamins, everything's gone. So when you take those properties into your body, when the body is finished utilizing them, there's no natural ecological recycling. It hardens in the system and it stays there, waiting for some bacteria to help ferment it and detoxify it, like with the virus. And especially if you're so poisoned that you can't harbor a parasite or a bacteria. Those are the easiest ways to detoxify. When your body uses bacteria or parasites, they consume up to 100 times their weight in a day, and then excrete very small amounts, about 1% of what they digest. So it's a very small amount of toxin that we have to neutralize and secrete or excrete. So it's very easy for the body to handle. When the body has to make a fermentation and make a virus, because viruses are not alive, the whole idea of having a vaccine for a virus is the most absurd thing in the world. It's like taking a vaccine because you have Tide soap in your house. The body, the cells make virus. When they take virus out of a body and put it in a petri dish, that'll breed a cell and can keep cells growing. There is no increase in virus. It is whatever they put in there is all that exists. However, when there's a cellular environment in that petri dish, then all of a sudden there are more of them. They increase. That's because cells make them. So we used to make soaps. For our bodies, we used to take coconut, and 90% of all soaps were made with coconut 100 years ago, 50 years ago. So when you make something from organic substances, you're going to have organic matter in it. So they say virus has DNA in it. Sure, the cell, when it makes an agent to dissolve toxicity, it puts a DNA in it of the tissue that it wants the virus to dissolve. So that's like putting a certain chemical, a certain agent in that solution so that it only addresses certain kinds of toxic cells. Otherwise you'd be disintegrating because you've got a lot of toxic cells in your body if you've eaten cooked foods all your life. So over the years, starting in 1976, I started fermenting the different foods that I consumed. I consumed a lot of Rice Krispies, a lot of corn flakes with lots of sugar on it. So I fermented all these foods over the years, but I've never let my milk go to a high alcohol state because I used to consume a half a gallon of milk a day. And then when I got away from home at 16, I was drinking a gallon a day because there was no restriction then, and I love milk. But it was always pasteurized, unless I was on the farm, and that was only for a few weeks a year. And then my grandmother got to boiling on the stove. Anyway, I consumed, probably the most consumed food that I had was the milk, the dairy. So I knew that was going to be a hell of a detoxification when I did it. So what I did was I took a quart of milk, put it in a half-gallon jar, put some maca in it, which is a substance, it's a high carbohydrate substance that was sun-dried because it would cause a heck of a fermentation. And it would give it that cereal variety because I ate tremendous amounts of cereal when I was a child with milk. So I know that those two would be connected well together. So I put them together and fermented it for a little over 2 weeks out of the refrigerator in a cupboard in the hottest time of the summer. And when I popped the top off of it, it was so fermented that the alcohol burned my nose. So what did I do? I had 3 cups in one day. Because everybody talks about these gung-ho issues, on the internet. And all this. So I wanted to see what would happen. Well, I was in diarrhea every 20 minutes for 36 hours. Diarrhea lasted about 3 weeks. I lost 20 pounds in 6 days. I am still having, and what it did was, when everybody has a tremendous amount of sugar in the system, and it's an overabundance, and your body can afford to make a tapeworm, tapeworms eat excessive sugars in the intestines. So I kept dumping all these sugars from all that toxic milk that I had, and it caused detox. So I had all this destroyed tissue, alcohol destroyed, and sugar destroyed, and carbohydrate destroyed tissue from the milk. So it was the heaviest detox I've ever done. And I got a tapeworm. First time I've had a parasite in my life. Wow. So it was great. I just passed it out 3 days ago. So thank God it was there to help me detox, because for about 4 weeks I was basically unable to work. I still had to travel, but I didn't want to. And I had to sleep 10, 11 hours a day, which is unlike me, because I sleep usually 4.5 to 5. So if you want to do detoxification, do it in a mellow way, because I am suffering right now. From all that radiation that I had, cauterized my spine. There was one part of my back that was in constant pain for years, about 15, 16 years. And when I put on a lot of weight and I hold the weight, there's very little pain. Even if I have a little soreness or something and detoxification's going on, they are very mild. The symptoms are mild. However, at this weight, the symptoms aren't mild. I can go into a pain in the chest. I mentioned the last time when I was 8 years old, in first grade, I swallowed a nickel and got stuck in my diaphragm, in the esophagus, right at the bronchial. And in those days, nickel was a third mercury. So the mercury was in there so long, because I was autistic and I didn't know how to tell anybody that I had a nickel lodged in my esophagus. So finally I went to the principal, Sister Virginia, and I kept pointing, I had something wrong, swallowed something, I knew that word meant. And I was caught here. So she got me some milk, and I washed it down with milk, and it went right down with washing down the milk. But that sat there for about 3 hours. And whenever you have anything go into the esophagus like this, your body secretes tremendous amount of hydrochloric acid. So it dissolved some of that nickel, and that mercury went all into that area. And that's part of what started giving me angina at 15 and a half with all the other medical drugs. Angina is heart attacks. I used to have anywhere from 4 to 7 a week. So all of a sudden, a few months ago, right before I did that heavy detox, I was dealing with that. The pain would get so bad that I couldn't move. And the only thing that would resolve it, I did everything, pain from the heat packs and everything. I felt like I was going to die from a heart attack, but I knew it wasn't the heart. But the pain was excruciating. So I started, just moaning aloud. And with the vibration, every vibration, because I moaned from here. Oh, I just kept going like this. It was just vibrating. And within a minute, the pain stopped. So now anytime it comes on, I sing or, just moan like that, and it goes away. Otherwise, it just gets worse and worse and worse till I can't even move. And it shoots back to that pain right back in the center. Again, this low weight that I have is a problem. Now that the tapeworm's gone, I'm starting to put on weight quicker. And that also means that since the tapeworm left, the head came out, so I knew it was all over. And all of its parts were in the feces in a 3-day period. So I know that it's over. It's finished that heavy milk detoxification. My body has finished the major part of it. So I do feel better in many, many ways. But I just want to caution you: if you're going to do anything, don't do anything over what I suggest when the detoxification book comes out, because you may suffer a lot more than I did. So anyway, that's what I had to say this week.
When's the book coming out?
It'll probably be next summer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was hoping it would come out, last summer, but with all these detoxifications and my injuries, 2 severe accidents, hasn't been easy.
Can you clarify one thing for me? You said that the virus creates itself with the DNA.
No. Cells make the soaps. Cells make virus. Virus are nothing other than soaps, solvents to dissolve certain kinds of tissue, because your body can't use can't use bacteria or parasites.
Right. And what did you say about DNA?
When the cell makes the protein body that becomes the solvent, the virus, it puts a DNA in it so that the virus only addresses certain tissue. If your body made a virus that would dissolve every cell in your body, because every cell is toxic because you've been on a cooked food diet all of your life, you would be a mess. You would die. So when a body makes a virus, it puts a DNA in there to tell that, to restrict that virus's activity to dissolve only particular cells. That's why when you get a virus, like a flu, it's either intestinal, or it's muscular, or it's neurological. It's always a selected part of your body.
So you're saying the body actually makes the virus, were you saying the body also makes the tapeworm?
Well, the tapeworms exist intracellularly. The body doesn't have to make them. Every cell contains virus and bacteria, parasites and bacteria. Every cell has every kind of bacteria and every kind of parasite that exists for animal tissue.
So it's like a tool that the body has whenever it needs it.
Correct, exactly.
So in people who are eating cooked food and everything, and why is it, and just wondering why they're getting so sick, the body's not delivering the goods and helping them out with that?
Well, because they may be too toxic. And if you're eating bad stuff like coffee and alcohol, what that does is it creates a condition in the blood that prevents you from doing anything other than controlling the contamination that's in the blood, neurological system, and lymph and intestines, just from the contamination of what you're eating. So a lot of people aren't able to detoxify normally. They'll go into their colds, they'll go into their flus, they'll have their aches and pains, and that's always the detoxification. Whether it's thorough and correct and they can regenerate from it depends upon what they eat. And on this diet, it's the only diet that will ensure that the detoxification you do is thorough, and that it may not be all done at one time because of a particular area, and that you will heal following the detoxification. Fever is always an indication that the detoxification is completed. You could have had a detoxification existing for a year and a half or 2 years in your body. And all of a sudden when the body says, I got too much the garbage accumulated, now it's time to dump, it goes into a flu or a cold, and you start dumping all this mucus, tearing, all of this. That's the poisons leaving the body in the mucus, or in the earwax, or in the tear ducts, or in the, through the tears, or the mucus in the mouth, or the salivary glands, or perspiring, vaginal discharge, fecal discharge, builds it into the hair and the nails. Wherever the body can discharge, it will. Let's say that you had a vaccine and the thimerosal went into a shoulder, and that shoulder goes into a detoxification. You can better believe that you're going to suffer pain. Most people will suffer pain because it takes about 1,000 white cells to harness one molecule of mercury to keep it from causing damage. or 2,000 fat cells for 1 molecule of mercury. That's why when you have pus come out of a pimple, you may have 3 or 4 molecules of a toxin, and all the rest are white cells, hundreds of thousands of white cells. And that's mainly what you're discharging is white cells in a very toxic environment.
Does bacteria do the same? Is the virus?
No, bacteria consumes the substance and reduces it to a small amount of what it consumed. So it reduces the waste that you have to eliminate. But if you take, let's say, a solvent, you're going to clean the floor, you dilute it in water, and then when you finish, you've got this whole bucket of contaminated water. That's what happens in the body, because the virus doesn't consume it and reduce it. The virus just spreads it all around in a fluid. That's why virus is so nasty. But if we weren't so poisoned, we'd be able to use virus and parasites. Thank God my body was able to handle a parasite the first time. When I saw that tapeworm that came out, I went, wow, finally! The poisons are out of my body and I can actually breed some bacteria and parasites, finally. And if I hadn't had that to help me during that detoxification, I probably would have been I would have created some serious damage in my intestines. So, it was very helpful. Any more questions about that? Okay, we're going to start around. Yes?
So if you say the cell produce the virus, so how about when people say some kind of a virus is contagious?
Is Tide soap contagious? Because it's found in every household?
No, so why
Is Tide soap contagious?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's simple as that. People make money by you going for medical treatment for a virus. It's just a soap that your body makes. And it can't be contagious if it's a soap, if it's manufactured in your cells.
Yeah.
I mean, if I inject it in you, your body might say, okay, I can use that virus and I will replicate it and manufacture and utilize it, but it usually has to be injected. Like what she's going through right now, it's not going to be contagious for us.
No.
The only things that are really contagious are things that live on the skin or the tissue, that the tissue is feeding on, like yeasts. If I had sex with a girl who had yeast, and I have lots of cellular toxicity that is sugar bound, I'm going to have the yeast there eating it, helping me detoxify. And crabs are contagious. They live on the skin. And salmonella is contagious that lives on the skin. Not internal salmonella. There are 2,300 varieties of salmonella. And most of them live internally. But the way we used to shower in the old days, when we didn't, take baths every day, we had all these little salmonella that went around eating up all the dead cells on the body. And there are about 100 varieties that do that.
Which is good.
So when your pet lizard, whenever your dog or cat has salmonella running around on it, that's the way nature always functions. It doesn't go around bathing. All these little creatures go around taking care of you. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Eat up the dead
So get rid of
cells.
the dead cells on the skin.
Don't you have to pick up the tapeworm somewhere from something you eat or food?
What did I just say? I said that each cell contains all of the eggs for any worm, any parasite that exists in human flesh, that eats on human flesh, plus every bacteria. It's a natural innate part of every cell. Now, when you take a tapeworm out of a person who's eating just cooked, and mainly people who have in fact, all people who have tapeworms, it lives on a high sugar environment. So when we send just cereals over and grains for these third world children to eat, they all get tapeworms because that's all they're eating. And our bodies are not meant to eat that. Our bodies are meant to eat animal foods, animal matter. They have all this excessive sugar going through the system, poisoning them. They have these bloated stomachs. They need the tapeworm to help them from having all that that advanced glycation end product and acrylamide toxicity. Without that tapeworm, they'd all die very quickly, probably within a year. But that tapeworm, they can live with that tapeworm for 20-some years in their body, if that's the major part of what they eat, is that sugar or high carbohydrate food. Now, when you take, I've seen pictures of tapeworms from animals, humans that eat, and other animals that eat only cooked foods. And when it shrivels and shrinks, it turns into like either a hard rice, or it turns into like a shrunken, flattened piece of corn. However, I kept a segment of the tapeworm to see what would happen for me, and the thing shriveled up into a thread and disappeared into a what? An egg. That's what it does in the body. You know, that egg exists in every cell in the body, and when your body needs it, and it only exists in the intestines, it will discharge that egg, and that egg will hatch.
It doesn't happen all the time that you can get this.
If your body has the ingenuity to utilize and do it, it will. But most people don't. I haven't. I've been too toxic. I had all the medications all the time, all kinds of medications, and then I had the chemo and radiation. So if any bacteria or parasite tried to help me, they would be poisoned to death. So none could thrive in my body.
So that means...
So I went through all these years with no parasites, no bacteria in my body, and I was sick all the time.
But now you're getting rid of the radiation, chemotherapy.
Right. So now, finally, I'm at the point where I can breed a parasite, which is wonderful. And in my book, in the recipe book, I talk about Joel Weinstock, the gastroenterologist at the University of Iowa. He had these long-term patients that suffered anywhere from 10 to 30 years with inflammatory bowel syndrome. And, you know, I gave a lecture about 20 years ago at Yale, and he was a part of that. And I was talking about how they are beneficial, and if we had them, we would have half the symptoms or none, because they would be helping us discharge all the poisons. So about 12 years ago, 11 years ago, he took the whipworm from a pig and got the eggs from it, and then put it in Gatorade and gave it to 6 people that suffered incurable inflammatory bowel syndrome. 5 of the 6 completely lost all symptoms just like that. We're talking 5 days. All their symptoms. And this is a painful thing, because every time you eat anything, you have instant diarrhea and pain. It's always painful. And if it goes into Crohn's, you have the poisons get into the joints and cause joints to swell and cause like arthritic rheumatoid arthritic condition. And it's very, very painful. And these people suffered the most. These 6 people, they were his worst clients. 5 of them out of the 6 completely resolved all the problem. They were back 5 months later, knocking on the door for more. Because what was their body? Obviously their body was so contaminated that they couldn't keep breeding because it was poisoning the parasites, so they had to go back for more of them. I tried to spike, bacteria and parasites in people and in animals, but was unable to do it. But I never thought of putting it in an alkaline substance like Gatorade. I could have put it in vegetable juice, but I thought, you don't put an animal product in a vegetable juice. But if I'd done that, it might have worked. I don't have a laboratory anymore, so, I can't do the experiment, but that would probably work. Because if you put it in an acid, solution or even water, the hydrochloric acid will dissolve the eggs and they'll never get past your stomach. Yes?
I know I've had this before with you, but I've studied parasitology for years. Amoeba can kill you. I mean, you can die very nicely. I've seen pictures of people, their organs will amoeba, their liver, half the liver is gone, eaten away, half of the heart is missing. I mean, they eat away at your whole intestines.
That's right. That's right.
They're lethal.
No. just in a few people, that are so toxic that it doesn't stop, it isn't controlled. But that's very rare that it happens, but it mostly happens in third world countries where they've just fed them garbage. They get no meat. And their animal tissue, their muscles and their animal tissue is so weak that the amoeba just wants to go in there and clean them up. The people who are doing this diet don't have a problem.
I don't know, I picked it up when I was out of the country years ago.
You weren't eating a good diet.
No, I wasn't, but I
Okay.
almost died from it.
Yeah, you almost died from it. Yeah, you were very thin, very dry, and very ill. So they're going to eat what it can.
But I didn't get it until I left the country. I went somewhere away and then came back. Otherwise, I was fine before I left the country.
90% of the cases who have amoebic dysentery don't leave anywhere, don't leave their own country. So that's another myth that they like to put out there to scare people, so that every time you go out of the country, you'll take their medications, their malaria pills, or their vaccine, yellow fever vaccines, so that they can make money. It's a business. You have to realize it's a business. I'm not saying that people don't die. People die. Some children die, and it isn't the way tapeworm that's done it. It isn't the amoeba that's done it. It's the toxicity in their body. The amoeba and the tapeworm are just trying to help out, trying to reduce the symptoms. But if somebody is so deteriorating, they're going to die. That's it. This diet doesn't save everybody. It saves 95% of the people that I know, and it reverses their disease. If you're one of those 5% that it doesn't. But the medical profession, they reverse almost no disease. They just make you get worse and worse till you're a cripple or you have a very poor quality of life. Some people, we're talking about 5% of the people that they help have that ability to heal themselves after that kind of an assault. But it's only 5%. So 95% I help, 5% they help, or those survive in spite of their therapies. So what I say is this is a much better average than theirs. So if you want to take Quell and all the other, anti-parasiticals, antibacterials, that's your choice. I'm not going to judge you for it. That's your life. It's your life experience. But it's certainly not my choice. Because I don't like being a worm crawling on the floor, only able to move my head and my shoulders and my arms. It was no joy, and that's what they did to me. And for me to take 30 minutes to go from the couch, which was about there, to the kitchen, 30 minutes to get there. I'd crawl 10 feet, pass out from exhaustion, and wait, crawl another 10 feet. And I had piles of urine, jars of urine and pans of feces, diarrhea and everything, sitting by me. They had to sit there for sometimes 3 days before the volunteers came. So I had to live in that odor, and I had to live in that pit, and I had to live that way because of the medical profession. I'm not going back there, ever.
When was this one?
After the chemotherapy and radiation. Yes?
Quickly, it's related to what you're talking about. You said that the chemotherapy and the radiation prevented your body from allowing the bacteria to exist. How long approximately does the body prevent bacteria from existing if they're given relatively large doses of antibiotics? That can last for 20 years as well?
It could last for 50, it could last all your life if you don't eat properly and reverse it. If you can't clean those poisons out, anytime a virus or a parasite anytime a bacteria or parasite goes in there to eat, it's going to be killed after a few meals. A few days, it's gone. No help. So your body has to make a solvent, which all that toxicity is dispersed all throughout your fluids in your body. That's why you get sore all over. If you're getting sore all over, virus is working.
So be grateful, right?
Yes.
How many years ago what was the last time you had chemotherapy, radiation, or whatever, any kind of...
1968 was the last time I had.
Any kind of drugs or anything like that?
No, the last time I had I got a terrible, my throat started closing off. I got a terrible sore throat in about 1972. And it came to the point I resisted it, but I was a fruitarian, so I wasn't eating the fats or the fruit, the foods that I needed to repair. So I just got to the point where I couldn't breathe. So the neighbor called a doctor, a friend of mine, and he came over and gave me a shot of penicillin. Allergic to penicillin, but it's still, at least it opened my throat, So I had terrible reactions for months, but I didn't die because my throat was shut down, nor did I have to have a tracheotomy. So, but I didn't know a good diet at that time.
So approximately 1970 is when you stopped getting these...
72 was the last time I took any kind of medication.
So from that point forward, you've been, whatever you've done, your diet getting better, your diet's been getting better, but it's still taken 30 years and more to process that.
To clean out that toxicity enough. Like I said in the recipe book, it takes 40 years to clean out the body. It took 20 to 21 years to build your body, to come to full maturation. Then your growth hormones reduce to a minimum. Unless you eat lots of meat, and then you can keep them going your whole life, raw meat. But if you don't, you won't do it. It takes just as long to tear the body down and rebuild it. So it takes you 21 years to disassemble it, and 20 years to disassemble it, and 20 years to rebuild it. So you're doing it all the time. So it's weaving in and out, so it takes 40 years. According to Howell and his work with rats and Pottinger's work with cats, it was the same way. They took very diseased animals, and it took them 5 generations before they became optimal. For us, 5 generations, it takes 7 to 7.5 years to regenerate every cell in the body one time. 5 times that is about 40 years. So, and I still got 18 years to go. But I'm already satisfied. 35 years ago, I was a worm on the floor. Severe pain constantly, and I couldn't sleep unless I was in a bathtub. Because the pain was so severe. I'd fall asleep for 5-10 minutes and wake up in severe pain. And have to move or turn over or something. But in the bath, with certain things in the bath, that I've mentioned many times, having the milk, the sea salt, and the vinegar in the water allows the body to be slightly buoyant. And when you're in there for about 40 minutes, the electrical system reverses. It doesn't send the charges to the brain. It starts sending them out through the skin into the water. And that's what takes away the pain. So I say if somebody has systemic pain or even a severe pain in a particular spot like the back, the spine, get in a hot bath with those ingredients and spend an hour in there minimum. You'll be freed. It's like a miracle. Yes.
What if you're sensitive to chemicals in water and you don't have a water filter?
Like I said, if you put the milk in there, you put 2 to 3 cups of milk in there,
No, I know.
2 tablespoons of sea salt, that neutralizes all the chemicals in the water.
Or without having
And the vinegar, 3 tablespoons. Pardon?
Without having a filter? Without having a filter?
Without having a filter, it's always good to have a filter because then some of those nutrients that you put in the bath will feed your body. But otherwise, it's going to go. We have 192 chemicals in our water in LA.
So it's okay to use the shower water for that formula?
You can't use the shower for that formula.
Well, if you got a filter on the shower.
So it's okay without a filter?
On any filter, if you have a 3-filter system on the outside of your house, major ones, the most you can remove is 50% of the toxins. If you have one of those little filters that go in the shower, the most you're going to remove is 1/3.
No, but you said if you put those milk and vinegar, then you don't use regular dirty water.
In the bath water. It has to sit in the bath water 7 to 10 minutes before you get in it. But you can't mix it with water and send it out the shower.
No, I meant to have it already filled up and then put out.
Yes. Yeah.
Because once you put the stuff in the water, you can go right in, can't you?
No, you have to wait 7 to 10 minutes.
How much milk did you say?
Why is that?
2 to 3 cups.
Because it hasn't absorbed into
It
it.
has to absorb those poisons in the water. Now, if I got into LA city water when I first did it, and that time there was only 158 chemicals in the water, and that was
Then you have to
because
wait.
I moved here in 1966, and when I get into the city water here, and if I took a bath, in 7 minutes I'd be just like this, literally shaking. I couldn't stop. My heart would pound. My blood pressure would rise, and I'd just shake. I'd tremble. I couldn't hold anything. I couldn't pick up anything. It was that bad. That's when I experimented putting different things in the water to neutralize those toxins, and that was the best formula I could come up with, and it works perfectly. Because I could spend 10 to 18 hours in the bathtub and be able to sleep and enjoy, never come up with nervousness. I also discovered that I let out about, I had a 12-foot tub during most of that time, which is pot metal. So metal holds heat much longer than plastic does. So I could go an hour and a half to 2 hours without waking, freezing to death when I was waking. But I just let 3-4 inches out of the tub, and then put scalding hot water and keep it moving around me until it got so hot again. I just go back to sleep for another hour and a half to 2 hours. And I never had to put more ingredients in the water. It'll handle it. Well, 3 cups. We're going to do that.
You have to wait.
Box of sea salt?
Non-fat milk?
No.
One question at a time. What?
You have to wait 10 minutes before.
7 to 10 minutes before you get in the water.
How about before you put the ingredients in? You could put it in right away.
It depends upon how hot you have the water.
Oh.
What I do is to heat the tub up so the tub doesn't cool down quickly, to cool the water quickly, I put scalding hot water in, so the first half of that water is nothing but hot scalding water. Let it sit for 10 minutes and it heats the entire tub. And then I put lukewarm water in and make it to a temperature that's just maybe a degree or hotter than I like, maybe 106, 107 degrees. When I get in, I like it to be 105 degrees max. And I put all the ingredients in when it hits about 105, 107, and then I let it sit for 7 to 10 minutes before I get in.
A cup of salt, you said?
2 tablespoons of sea salt.
And non-fat milk?
Pardon?
Non-fat milk?
Oh no, fatty milk. Don't use anything to make skim milk, but cheese.
But you have to wait before you put the ingredients in because it's going to be too hot for the milk.
If it's too hot, you have to wait for it to spin.
Otherwise,
Or you have to put more cold water in to cool it.
Otherwise, you could just put it in right away.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be raw milk.
Yes. Definitely does, yeah.
So 107 is okay? Am I getting to put the milk in?
Yeah, because mostly what it's going to do is absorb the poisons and help pull poisons out of your cells. The good thing, and people say, well, I can do that in a sauna or steam bath. When you're doing a sauna and steam bath, those toxic substances stay in the tissue. A lot of times they'll go in your skin. So a third of them may penetrate your skin and maybe be reabsorbed or damage your skin. So if you're doing a sauna, you have to get out every 3 minutes to rinse off. You can't stay in there a long time. You're going to cause some damage. Sure, you're going to secrete, a lot of stuff, but 1/3 of it may cause more damage. That's why I like baths. It's discharged into the water. It goes right into the water. It doesn't stay on your skin when those ingredients are in the water.
What happens if
It
you
just
went-
draws it out.
What happens if you went in the water without waiting? Is that it?
Without waiting for what?
For 7 to 10 minutes.
Then you're going to have some of that garbage in the water absorb into your body, into your skin.
The chemical.
Yep. And then it's going to get into your nervous system and into your blood, and you're not going to do so well. Yes.
Would you recommend that kind of tub that you talked about with the metal?
Yes.
Core?
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Well, it's good in that it's still, it's more electrical. So it'll stay hot longer, and for me that was necessary. Plastic, it may gas a little bit, but it doesn't have the electrical feel.
What are you supposed to do?
It depends on, how would you handle better? Can you handle the radio waves that metal draws to it? Or do you handle the gases from the phthalates from the bath? And I would say the ingredients in the bath is going to handle the phthalates better than your body's going to handle the electromagnetic energy that's absorbed. But then the water may absorb that too. So either, you just have to see what you're comfortable in. You'd have to stay in for about an hour and a half to find out.
What do you do to get rid of those poisons? You just keep doing what you're doing?
Don't get in the bath.
No, I already did. I didn't know before.
Well, you eat lots of eggs. It's the best thing to do. Eggs and butter and cream and milk.
How many eggs would you recommend?
This is getting too personal.
I better call you tomorrow.
Yes.
So when you eat a substance and you notice that afterwards you have pains, is that the detoxing?
Yes.
Like AIDS specifically?
Just remember, any pain is swelling.
Right.
It's pressure on the nerves. How do you relieve the pressure? You have everything around it relaxed so it can expand without ripping, without the pressure. So applying hot water bottle or getting to a bath is going to do that.
Oh, I see. But I mean, if you like eating eggs or something like that, you notice immediately that, you might get a knee problem or something like that.
After eating something?
Like an eggs. So you know you're detoxing, right?
Yeah.
So,
But it may be unrelated to the egg.
well, but the egg could be helping it process out.
Well, the body will use the nutrients from the egg to help get rid of it, yes.
Right.
But it usually takes a while to get into the blood. Into the system. It has to go through the duodenum, it has to digest. The fat has to be digested. It takes, you're talking about, 45 minutes to an hour before it leaves the duodenum.
Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't happen instantly.
No, I know it doesn't happen.
Sometimes the lubrication form, the pain formula works within 20 minutes. That's because when you put the bee pollen in it, the bee pollen is a very finite protein. And the bees, when they collected it, they put their saliva on it, so it's pre-digested. It's broken down the shell. It's like a nut and it has a hard shell on it. That's why you can't dry it. Because once it's dried, the shell is hardened and it's like eating a walnut. There's no way you're going to break that shell down and digest it. But when it's moist, then your body can utilize that protein instantly. Also egg whites. That's why I use so much egg in the diet. Because the liquid, the egg white is full of easily absorbed and digested protein instantly. That's why I worked for that woman with emphysema who was supposed to die on the weekend. She ate 66 eggs and she was out of bed and off the oxygen for the first time in 2 years.
No, I read that.
Okay, and we're going to start going around and asking your personal...
One thing, she had 66 eggs in one day.
2 days.
2 days.
Okay, do you have a question?
Oh yeah, about what you were just saying. Because I bring that up now, what the problem would be. I was going into the bath without waiting 7 to 10 minutes during different times of when I was going in the bath. Because I thought that's what you're supposed to do.
No, I've always said wait 7 to 10 minutes before you get in the bath after you put the ingredients.
So now, after all these years, I don't know.
You just eat your regular diet. It'll just have to detox gradually. Getting in the bath is going to help because you're going to discharge more of it out of your skin.
Oh, by waiting though. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this coughing is continuing. It's okay. It's okay.
You're detoxing. Most of the detoxification...
Thyroid? Did you say the thyroid?
That's what I'm going to say.
Oh, okay.
I'm already answering your question. Right. When the throat, lungs, and sinuses detox, it's always this part of the body.
The brain.
Anywhere from the throat all the way up to the top of the head.
You're referring to the brain.
Brain, eyeballs, sinuses, thyroid, parathyroid, lymph glands here, whatever is detoxing.
It could go on for weeks and weeks, that's what I'm noticing.
Could go on for a year. Some people I've seen. I had one person who's been in diarrhea for a year and 4 months. And he functions fine and he's big as clay. Here's a guy who has diarrhea and he's big as clay. He could still put on the weight. Most people who have diarrhea, can't put on the weight, but he was really skinny, when he started. Now he's still with diarrhea and doesn't ever affect him. Doesn't bother
A
him.
year and 4 months like
In
that.
4 months now.
He doesn't-
No, it has to be longer than that because I saw him I was just in Chicago. No, a year and 4 months.
You don't, he's not getting rid of his bacterial flora or something? The flora of the bacteria? Because-
Well, it isn't working as well. He's not absorbing all the fluids in his system, but he's still retaining. Well, I think he drinks too much water. Right? But people only listen so much. But he's doing well, so I don't get on his case. Anybody that does well what they're doing, even if they're doing things that I suggest they don't do, as long as they're doing okay, I won't get on their case. But if they call me about a problem, and I know it's helped by what they're doing, then I'll say, you've got to stop this. But reduce it.
Well, one thing, going to Glen Ivy is also good because of the hot water.
Yeah.
The
But
minerals.
you've got clay in that water.
Yeah, that could draw it out too.
Yeah, but you don't have the chemicals and poisons in that water, so you don't have to put those nutrients in the water.
No, I know that, but I'm saying for people that took baths without putting it in, it could draw out those poisons.
Yeah, but we're talking about city water here.
Oh, I know that, but I'm saying if they did go in the city water and go to Glen Ivy mineral pool and clay,
It still wouldn't help as much. You need those ingredients in the water to help draw some of those things out. They're already embedded in your skin and get absorbed deep into the connective tissue.
no, what I'm saying, it will draw out what you add, wasn't it?
No,
The clay.
no. It won't draw out everything. That's why there are certain nutrients in that combination that can pull out a lot more than clay can by itself. Or even a good mineral water. I have well water that's great. I still put those ingredients in the water. Do you have a question?
Yes. With these caps, I find that very hard. It doesn't sound like it. So what do you
I eat all raw. I don't go off at all. So what I always do is I know that I can't get butter in most places. I'm going to France, I can get dairy anywhere.
Yes.
In regular grocery stores now. Now when I was traveling there, I started going there in 1973 when I had a girlfriend that lived there. So I went to Paris like 3 months a year, a month at a time. And I was on their case because I could get raw milk at the outdoor markets. Like they have like farmers markets right there in Paris, and right in the streets and park, different parks and different locations. So I could get all the raw milk, raw cream, raw butter right there. And there was a company that was producing it and had it there on the market, but no health food store was carrying it in Paris. I had to go 50 miles out of Paris to get the dairy.
What about if you go to another state? Probably get it in Paris, but you can't get it in the States.
But I got on their case, and now they're carrying it everywhere. Even the supermarkets are carrying it. I was on their ass for 3 years.
In the United States.
No, Paris.
Paris.
But in other states, I've got connections everywhere. So in the States, I can get anything I want anywhere.
Do you have
Wherever I
it
go.
on your website, something like that? Because when I go to Texas, they don't have to get it there. I mean, not obvious.
You just have to have it sent to you in Texas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know no excess farmers in Texas. I have farmers in probably 25 states where I can get product, but in the other, 25 states, it has to be sent there. But my clients already get it sent to them, so when I go there, they provide it for me. I just tell them what I want ahead of time.
So that's
But I have clients who travel like that, and they just have it sent to where they're going. So it's waiting for them when they get there.
James sent it?
Pardon?
James sent it?
No, companies that, or people who have farms, they'll send it. When I go to a foreign country, I always take a half a pound of butter for every day that I'm going to be there. So like Tuesday night, I'm leaving for Asia, and I'll be gone till December 22nd. And I will take 17 pounds of butter with me.
In your case. In your suitcase. Your
No, I
bags.
take it in my cooler.
Cooler, yeah.
And I have a cool pack with it. And I take a quart of honey for that whole, 40-some days.
So that's your
That's my stash, because I can get meat anywhere. I can get eggs anywhere. You can get better meat and eggs in Asia.
You have to take Olympic jars with glass jars you're putting in your bag.
Yes, I do.
Do you let it go through the X-ray?
Well, when I'm going to Asia, what I do now is I can travel. I can be on a plane 5 hours. I can get anywhere in the United States in 5 hours. So if they don't let me get through, and I have a doctor's note that says, his food is his medicine, don't X-ray and all this shit. They've gotten really nasty leaving LA. And so they're just obnoxious. In communist countries, I have more freedom.
Yeah.
I was in China, and people talk about the freedom we have there. It's so full of shit. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but
It pisses me off.
Remember, we're worried about the terrorists.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, no.
Terrorists are right here. So anyway, when I go through China Airlines usually, or any of those Japanese airlines. They will take my food and they'll hand it to a guy who walks it out, brings it, and hands it to me on the plane, so it doesn't go through scanning. Because I'll be on that plane 19, 20 hours.
Do you know who domestic will not do that?
No. Here, nobody will do it. So that's what I mean. If they don't let me do it, I will stand there and eat the raw eggs in front of them, half a quart of milk, and the honey and butter and the raw meat, and I'll do it right. They get so mad because they're really paranoid. Most of them are paranoid of getting something, I'm sucking raw eggs in front of them. They get really nasty. I've been threatened that if I didn't leave the area and go eat somewhere else, I'd be in trouble. I said, you're going to arrest me for eating? Do you think a jury's going to find me guilty for eating? And I said, what's going to end up is eventually I'm going to get you in court and you're going to be tied up for 2 days in depositions. And it's going to cost you guys a lot of money and a lot of time. So I said, you think about that. And will a jury find you guilty when I've got a doctor's note that says my food is my medication and you refuse to let me have it and you've endangered my life?
Do they let you through?
No. Well, they used to up until 6 months ago.
No, I know.
Then all of a sudden just a big curtain came down. The Iron Curtain came down. The communist fascist Iron Curtain came down. And that's it. When I was in China and in Vietnam, I gave them the letter and this. They said, okay, they were very friendly, and they said I had a fork in my bag, so I couldn't take that through. So they went and found my bag and put it in my bag. These were the security people. They're so friendly and so nice. So all this crap about communism is garbage. They were on the same as anybody else. But they happen to be more friendly for some reason. Maybe Russia was different. You had to wait in line all day to get a loaf of bread. But in other communist countries, it isn't that way. Okay, your question?
Okay, will you walk me through taking care of whatever's going on with my shoulder? I suppose it could be a detox. I've just been lifting really heavy things, and I placed a really heavy backpack on it. But my diet's been horrible. And,
the what?
My diet's been horrible. And
then how do you expect me to help?
I'm asking you to suggest how to eat now to make up for all the bad things I've done.
Just follow the diet.
Okay.
Use a hot water bottle wherever you
Use a
hurt.
water bottle and take a hot bath.
Yeah. Use a pain formula if you're in pain.
What's up with the tingling? It's
well, let's say if you're discharging mercury from vaccines or injections in the arm, and that mercury travels down your nerves, you're going to have tingling. You're going to have nerve damage. Especially if you don't eat right, you're not going to have the proper nutrients in the body to prevent that mercury is discharging from damaging your nerve tissue. When I went through it this year and last year in this arm, this year in this arm, my whole arms turned gray from the mercury. It smelled just like mercury. I've had so many injections, especially tetanus shots. They use a lot of thimerosal and tetanus than they do anything else, any other drug. So my whole arm turned gray from it. If I hadn't been eating a good diet and been in that tub discharging those poisons quickly out to the skin, I would have had severe nerve damage, but I didn't. Now, back when I was, after the chemotherapy, everything tingled because I was poisoned everywhere and it wasn't on a good diet. But I also lost all the nerve control from here all the way down.
How long in the tub?
Pardon?
How long do you sit in that tub?
Depends upon the person. I suggest a minimum of an hour, up to an hour and a half. If you want to stay in all night like I used to and you need to sleep, do it all night. Okay, do you have a question?
What causes and how do you deal with athlete's foot?
Athlete's foot is a fungus. That's another helper. It helps. How molds deteriorate and dissolve certain things. Those particular cells are degenerated best with fungus, which is you can have yeast, giardia, you have various different kinds of molds. The yeast go after sugar-related ones. Other molds go after non-sugar-related damaged cells. So that's a good thing. But I give several remedies in the book, like you coat your foot with honey and wrap it, overnight. And that'll smother it. That doesn't kill it and stop it. You don't want to kill it and stop it. There's no way you can, because it's part of, just like you have bacteria and parasite eggs in every cell. You also have molds. It's part of nature. That's why you let a fruit sit. You don't have to expose that fruit to a mold. It molds on its own. You can put it in a hermetically sealed environment, and that will mold. When I took a lamb and we butchered it in the laboratory, everything was completely sterilized, and we had one area where it was glassed in case, it was hermetically sealed, no bacteria could get involved in it, and we had a couple of corn dracaenas to produce oxygen to get over into that area with 2 HEPA filters. So it had to pass through. And then we kept it at the sheep's body temperature, which was about 96 degrees, 96.7, 96.8. And within 3 days, parasites developed. Where do the parasites come from? It's a natural part of every animal cell. It's like any fruit will mold. It's a natural part of fruit. All of a sudden, you can also put, one time I let fruit sit in a hermetically sealed environment like that for 20 days. Flies appeared. Where the frick are the flies coming from? There are worms in the fruit cells that allow it to come out and work on it. And those are called fruit flies.
I guess my thought was, is it a symptom of any some imbalance in my body or something like that?
Well, it's toxicity. It's stored in those molds will help breaking it down.
There's just no process of
detoxification, absolutely. And the way you can mitigate it is by using the primal facial body care cream. When I had it, I hadn't had it since I had it all the time as I was a child. And it wasn't until I went on a raw diet, started eating raw dairy, that it went away. Well, last year it came back for the first time. And only in the foot where I had a bad bicycle accident in 1981. I broke 7 bones in the foot. I was on a bicycle and in the desert, and somebody had let their sprinkler on all night, so it created a moss, algae, very slippery algae in the gutter. And I was going close to the gutter, and the wheels just slipped out from under me, and my toes caught on the curb and ripped. This one was ripped out to here, so it was ripped all the way down to here. This one was ripped to here, and this one was ripped to here, and this one was just barely torn. But I'd broken 2 bones here, and then 4 bones here, and then 1 over here. And it was pretty painful. And those were the only areas where the mold, and all I did was I packed mud in it, clay, to stop the bleeding, and, it's all treated. I had a little 14-year-old girl who loved to go around cracking people's knuckles, put my toes back in place. So that's how I had them adjusted.
What kind of clay did you use? Lead ivy or?
I just pulled up what was in the ground in the area.
What was the
It was desert. Pardon?
What was the significance of getting the athletes put in this place where you?
Well, when I packed when I didn't, a lot of the dead tissue remained in there and it sealed over it. And probably dirt and a lot of other things that, I should have used clay or something. But I was out in the wild. What was I going to do, So I used what was available. And it was, after I'd been out living outdoors for a long time. So I didn't have a clean clay or anything else. And I didn't take time to clean out off the torn tissue, or maybe move it back into place. I just packed it, put a sock over it.
No, it's new.
And but now it's new. I mean, this toe, 3 years, was stuck out here. And then when I went through the athlete's foot, this one is still a little bent out. You see that one bent out slightly. But before I went through that athlete's foot for a year, this toe was out here. And all of a sudden that mold, that fungus, went in there and cleaned out the tissue, so now it's right. The only place I still have a little bit of itching is here. So I'm hoping that, after another year, that'll be aligned properly too. And the athlete's foot would have been helpful to do that.
You didn't have any cast on it?
No. In fact, I went to see Caddyshack that day. I was in so much pain, I had a headache, so I walked to Caddyshack, which was about 5 miles, and the next day I bicycled 12 miles. You have to get over the pain by doing something. If you don't take drugs, you've got to distract yourself. So that's why. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a couple of quick questions.
Just one first.
Just one. I know you had skin cancer. What did you do to get rid of it at the time? I know somebody that has it.
Well, I had it several places. Once I had it here, and here, all at the same time. And, I just did a lot of praying and a lot of eating, just controlled eating. Because my nose I lost a third of the nose. I lost the whole, went into the bone here, ate into the bone here. Leaked into my eye and damaged my eye. So I had 6 layers of scar tissue over the cornea. So I lost my good sight in the left eye. And they said the only way, I went to an optometrist to see about it once the cancer was over. And they said that the only way that eye could be corrected is to have somebody donate their cornea and have a transplant. But since it happened 7 years ago, 4 layers of the cornea have been removed. So the vision is getting better and better. I mean, I can see your eyebrows, but I can't see the very hairs.
Did you put something on the skin itself? Or?
Well, what I did was I put butter burned, but I put butter around trying to see when you have cancer, the cell involved has virus in it, as a solvent that dissolves the surrounding tissue. That's why it melts the system away. It dissolves all the surrounding dead cells, and even if they're not dead cells, it'll dissolve cells, whatever they come in contact with. When people are eating a bad diet, when people are eating a better diet, there's less of it. There's still some. So I put butter all around, sometimes cream around, to help mitigate that, that disfiguration. I still have a huge scar. The scar used to go very deeply all through here. Now there's just a main scar here and here. And you can still see a heavy scar here and then one right here. But I had a hole here and a hole here and a huge hole here. But it was just keeping on the diet. When I got it here, I had been experimenting with the fecal matter. So I put the fecal matter on it 3 times over a 2-week period. Disappeared like that.
Took it away. You know the actress Rhonda Fleming?
Uh-huh.
Her husband just had a major stroke. She's a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I was recommending hyperbaric oxygen chambers. Are you familiar with those? I've heard that they reverse a lot of the damage of stroke. Is there anything else besides the diet that you can?
Mm-hmm. Those hyperbolic chambers only work in very rare cases, and it doesn't have anything to do with the chamber. just that you've got that certain amount of people that reverse that condition. And, if they get in the hyperbolic chamber, they're going to
introduce more oxygen into the system.
Yeah.
Your oxygenism, which causes, brain or nerve damage. It's got nothing to do with it. Oxygen just means that you won't transmit and relay certain kinds of information in and out of the nervous system, and you'll be weak because the oxygen doesn't get into the muscles. So you don't have the ability to utilize fat as energy, whether the fat is from an acetone or from the regular fat.
But he had high blood pressure too. So
Anybody who has high blood pressure, just remember, anybody who's got a body functioning in a certain way, that body's functioning because it needs to. High blood pressure is very important for anybody who's got, collapsing intestines. Somebody's tape recorder shut down here. They need that high blood pressure to keep the veins and arteries open. Otherwise, they'll collapse. So you got all these doctors giving them things that their body's trying to correct, and they just get worse and worse and worse. Everybody that I've known has had that condition is dead within 7 years, no matter what age they are.
What
It's
about
ridiculous.
arthritis? What's the symptoms of arthritis?
This way, because we're getting into a whole field that we go on and on about different things. The only thing that will help that reverse, that stroke damage reverse, is eating chicken and fish together. With some butter and cream.
Chicken and fish.
Chicken and fish together, raw chicken and raw fish with some raw cream and raw butter. Equal amounts of raw cream and raw butter with it.
yeah,
And that can reverse it. Just like you can only help those who will be helped. That's it. Do you have a question?
Could I wait till it's 3 minutes?
Yes. Do you have a question, Roger?
Yeah. I read an article recently that claimed that if you took a teaspoon of cod liver oil for each 50 pounds of body weight, in other words, 150 pounds, you take 3, and you put it in either milk or fresh squeezed orange juice once a day, do you think that has any effect on
Well, any of your pressed oils help the body make solvents to dissolve toxicity. That's why I say...
Well, it has omega-3 acid,
Again, that's another stretch.
Okay,
Aajonus,
right.
A lot of people saying that if you have more toxicity in the body, you need all nutrients, not just omega-6 and omega-3.
Yeah.
You need all nutrients. It's just that certain ones will reverse certain just little elements of the problem.
Focusing on arthritis now, what do you think about that?
Arthritis is mainly toxicity in the joints that's built up in the joints. So you've got bacteria in there trying to eat up the dead toxicity or the toxicity in the cells that have been destroyed by the poisons that have gone, the toxins that have gone to that joint. So the bacteria is not your problem. It's the toxins that have destroyed the tissue that the bacteria is feeding on. Usually if you'll eat, don't eat as much red meat, cut down to 50-50, 50% red meat, 50% white meat, and you're eating the lubrication formulas, you'll mitigate any kind of pain sensation while that bacteria works in your joints. But it's not going to go away overnight.
Well, it didn't claim that. It claimed if you took it over time, that this was...
And, if you want to dissolve toxicity, pressed oils are a good way to do it. Your seed oils are like vegetable oils.
Well, cod liver oils, though, it comes from...
Cod liver. Yeah, but cod liver oil is completely solvent treated. The FDA requires it. So all that from Norway, all that stuff, they say is pure. It's solvent treated because they have to purify it.
Really?
Yep. Even though it's not heated, they solvent purify it. And that solvent is almost identical to brake fluid.
flax oil too?
No. Flax oil, no. But remember I've said that vegetable oils turn into rock? There's a vegetable oil right here. They sell them at Wild Oats. And you can buy a variety of them. They are a rock. Animal fats never did that.
What do you use it for?
What do you use?
Oh, just for fragrance.
Oh.
Because I only bathe once every 5 days, and some people say I smell like cheese.
Can you rub this on your skin?
On the fourth or fifth day. So no, I just put it between my clothes. So the fragrance is my clothes. But the whole point here is that this is what vegetable fats become, rock. That's what's causing all the hardening of the arteries in my heart.
How do they make this?
Including flax?
No, they just collect it. You collect it and let it sit. In a year you have rock.
Would that include flaxseed oil?
Yes, flaxseed oil has the same nature. It just doesn't get as hard as quickly. That's why I say in my book, when you're using, for cancer, you use a very small amount so the body can, get rid of it.
Where does olive oil fit into this picture?
Olive oil is a fruit oil.
Ah.
It's a good solvent, but will not harden. Soy will harden terribly, so will flax oil. You put those vegetable oils and the seed oils with dirt, and it'll be rock in a year.
Borage?
Pardon?
Borage?
Yes, absolutely. Borage is one of the worst. You have rock. And feel it. You want your cells to be built out of something that's going to harden like that in 5 to 7 years?
It says it's resin.
Resin is the fat from a tree. That's a pinyon tree. But that's what vegetable oils are. All vegetable oils are resins.
You would put this on your clothing, but you wouldn't necessarily rub oil on your wrists or anything.
Scratch the hell out of you if you try.
Just put it between. What do you just put it between your clothes?
Yeah. Not in that. I have those cloth tea bags. You just put a few in there and put it between your clothes. If you're like me and you don't bathe often.
What about the omega-3, 6, and 9s that they say?
We just talked about that. You have concentrations of nutrients needed, but you need every nutrient, and this is 3 and 6. And in a certain ratio, they come up with these wild theories because they want to be published. But nobody's done long tests to prove anything. And when you're doing that, you're usually going to end up with, some kind of imbalance when you're creating a concentrated, substance. But even Udo Erasmus's oils are heated beyond what they should be, beyond 96 degrees, plus he uses a solvent or something.
When they say cold pressed, it doesn't mean.
Cold pressed doesn't mean that it's really cold pressed. It means that, that they don't use heat in the process, and they use a machine that not heat, but when that friction starts pounding and mashing and juicing, it gets up to 175 degrees, like when they're making walnut butters. That's the lowest temperature, is about 155 degrees for some nuts, soft nuts, when you're making nut butters. All the other oils will get much hotter. Flax oil, you have to have a radiator type system to cool the system, because flax seeds are very hard.
What about putting flaxseed in a coffee grinder?
That will just tear your intestines up. It'll act like glass.
Vaccine and what?
Coffee grinder. And you're also going to have phytic acid. It's going to prevent you from digesting. If you want to use a non-binder, something to help you move and become regular, you use chia seeds. Chia seeds are very fine. They're the size of poppy seed, about the size of a pinhead. And they're round. And they're not divided into a half like flax seed and a lot of the other seeds. They are round like the poppy and completely integrated. So when they open up, they have like a volcano top. And they secrete this gelatin out the top. And there's no sharp edge at any time ever. And if you take about, depending upon your size, 3 to 4 tablespoons of that, soak it in 6 to 8 ounces of good water for 24 hours, the seeds secrete a solution that turns the water into a gelatin. And then you mix that, you just stir it into a lubrication formula. And then you eat that and at night, and then you'll have, some good bowel movement.
So cod liver oil would be toxic too.
Absolutely. Because you've got,
Everyone's giving it to their little kids. And
it used to be, when I was working in a health food store at a vitamin department, we could get it from Japan or Norway, and it was cloudy and stunk. Now everything has to be purified and clean, and the only way you can do that is with solvents, chemicals.
So the earlier years.
So even though they're cold pressed or cold processed, they're chemically treated.
Did they do that years ago with the cod liver oil?
They started at about in 79.
Oh, so when I was growing up, then it was pure. It was okay.
Well, it depends upon the brand you have. Cheap brands, were solvent processed or heat processed. If you got the expensive ones, they were good.
even the Norwegian thing.
This is what I said. All that from Norway is all chemically treated. Yes?
Let me know if this isn't related. With the flax seeds, if those are harsh, it's like Ray over at the Tarramin Cow Minerals. He says that the Tarramin is rough, and that's why you want to take he said it's rough, that it has a kind of abrasive action that...
That's why I say you have to soak your clay for 5 days before you eat it. You have to soak your clay for 5 days before you eat it.
Really?
Yeah.
The one you put it in the juice?
You don't put it, well, even if you put it in the juice, you have to soak it beforehand. You want the molds and all of that to be active. If it is, it's going to be a little sharp on your intestines.
Soak it in mineral water?
Yes. But you don't want to, you want to shake the carbon out of it if you're using that kind of mineral water. Because there are bacteria in the clay that will start becoming very active after a few days in the water. You don't want to destroy them, and the carbon will destroy them.
And what's the ratio of water to clay?
Just make it a paste.
Make it a paste?
Yeah, like you do for, let's say, plaster of Paris before it dries, while you're just first thing. Okay, do you have questions?
I was curious about something.
Wayne, is that right?
Eric.
Excuse me.
In your book, We Want to Live,
Uh-huh.
there's a small section where you're talking about enzyme mutations against different colored cooked fruits and vegetables. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you came across that information or where you got that information. Like, how do you know that if you don't have the right enzyme mutations for eating cooked red fruits and vegetables, I think you said it could cause acne and other things like that, and the resins or something could cause certain problems. So I wondered if you could talk about where you got that information.
Well, it wasn't my idea to explore it that way. It was Awanza's idea. So she oversaw that particular phase of the laboratory experiments that we did. And, I saw the documentation by the laboratory technician. And, she explained it to me what it all meant. And when I was dealing with patients, I could stop acne easier and better, reduce it majorly if they cut out red cooked foods.
I think there's a part where you said that, I forgot which color, but a certain color of fruits and vegetables could cause a lot of... cooked. Could cause a lot of bronchitis and, lung type infections, colds and stuff. But I've always thought that usually people that have a lot of cold and bronchitis and stuff, that's coming from pasteurized dairy products usually. I would never have thought it came from cooked fruits and vegetables.
Well, if you look at all the experiments and the laboratory tests that they've done with milk and pasteurized milk, it's never created bronchitis. It's never one of the symptoms. They say it creates diabetes, osteoporosis, and diseases like that. It has never been attributed to bronchitis. Never been attributed. I mean, it's a myth now. A lot of alternative people make that claim, but it comes from no research. It's just they're hypothesizing.
But a lot of people's experience is that if they eat pasteurized dairy, they start to get a lot of mucus and then they get a cold.
Yes, because the body's trying to discharge the poisons to the mucus. And if it's discharging out the mucus, that's not a problem. They're getting rid of it.
So what you're saying is pasteurized dairy products cause a lot of mucus, but they don't cause the poisons of the mucus or...
Not unless, if the mucus is taking the poisons out, it's not going to cause bronchitis.
So that's a healthy person that's having this mucus after pasteurizing.
Well, it means that their body's discharging it quicker, so the body's trying to protect itself.
So if you're having a cough, you're releasing all the
poisons
from the pasteurized milk.
Correct.
Could be.
As much as possible.
I mean, yes. The longer it lasts, the more you can release.
Yeah, depending upon how you break it down in the system.
Is there any way you could describe an experiment that Alonzo did where she developed that information about different colors?
Well, what she did was she asked the laboratory technician to see if there was any kind of a fat residue that was connected in certain tissue. So what he had to do, he had to use certain kinds of enzymes, which are solvents, to dissolve the tissue and then separate it so he could study it. And, how exactly what he used and all of that, I didn't take notice of. But this is when he said these were the results, and when you looked at those results, then you could see that in this kind of condition there were a lot of the resins from the red foods, resins from the yellow foods in these different conditions. And that's how it was resolved and concluded. Do you have a question? Okay. Do you have a question?
Yes. Not that I'm in dire need at this minute, but what do you suggest as preventive measures for graying hair?
That's a difficult one because graying hair is a result of toxic metals leaving the brain. Mm-hmm. If it's in the brain, if it's in the chest, of course, those wherever the hairs are turning gray, you've got heavy metals leaving, and the body's building them. The lymph system is carrying them to the follicle to get rid of them by building them into the hair. Mm-hmm. If it causes follicle damage, it turns gray. Mm-hmm. Often it reverses. After the chemotherapy, I just had a few patches of hair, and when it came back, I was gray for 2 years. Then it reversed. And 2 years ago, I had a huge patch of gray here, and it was there for 3 months and went away. Then the next year, last year, I had a huge patch here, and it came and went. 3 months? The only place that it stays is right here, gray. Yeah. And then it goes in and out of degrees. A year ago, this was completely gray. Now it's salt and pepper again. So it goes in and out.
What about white hair? Is that the same?
See, the follicle is the ability for the follicle to use paraminobenzoic acid, which is a B vitamin, which controls pigmentation. When the body can no longer utilize PABA, paraminobenzoic acid, or that you're not eating it, then your hair will turn colors if heavy metals get into the follicles.
Okay, so basically...
there's nothing you can do about it.
Right, it's another way of detox.
Yeah. And I had one guy go on the diet at 51 years old. He was completely gray, and after 5 years on the diet, his hair went red again.
Right.
Some people can make it
severe reverses, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. How about getting fresh blood? What's good? What's a good detox, or is it as good as what meat does?
No, your red blood cells just help red blood cells, and they're full of, the nutrients that red blood cells are concentrated in. So it's just another food. I've eaten blood many times, but I don't like it, because it coagulates so quickly. You have to drink it instantly. And, I've killed many chickens and ducks and stuff like that, and it almost makes me nauseous drinking it that way. But 2 years ago, or was it 3 years? 3 years now, I was in Hawaii and at Pangaea, and we had decided to do a celebration since I was there, and nobody had ever killed an animal and butchered it. So I agreed to do it while I was there. So we had drummers, we had about 5 vegetarians around in the group and from the surrounding community, and they just wanted to watch us. So there were about 15 of us all together, and we took the goat and we put a harness around it, spun it around, and I would chant to it as its eyes came, trying to put it to sleep, and the other guy would spin it around, every time the back legs came to him. So he just kept spinning the goat until he went to sleep. And then we put the harness, we took the front harness off and just had the back harness and had him hanging, legs up and head down. I cut his jugular vein. We had 2 gallons jars, half with milk, goat's milk. So when we bled it, I cut the jugular vein, bled a half a gallon of blood into each gallon jar and mixed it with the milk. And then it didn't coagulate. It was great. And, I watched everybody, even the vegetarians, tried it. It's like, some people were even painted with blood and everything, it's part of the ritual. Some people get into that. And, it doesn't hurt anything. It's just fun, I guess. Like a costume party. And even the vegetarians, accepted as we passed it around to drink some. And you see everybody's face going, expecting this awful taste. Yeah. And then they got into their mouth, and you see their eyes brighten, and you just start we drank the 2 gallons with 15 people in 45 minutes. It's gone.
It just tastes like milk.
It tastes like ice cream. The blood makes it so rich, it tastes like ice cream.
Wow.
It's just like bizarre how it can taste so incredibly different than you expect. Pardon?
How did you feel?
Oh, man, I was charged for a couple of days.
Like a buzz?
Oh, sexually, everything. Everything was going.
So does the animal has to be clean, or can you just go and get chicken from it?
You want to get healthy animals.
Okay.
They're not fed garbage.
And where do you get in Los Angeles? Is there anywhere you can get?
I told you that number I could give you that.
Yeah, but it's far away.
That's Pomona.
Pomona?
Not Pomona, that Lizzie's. Lizzie's, not Pomona. Chino, yeah.
Chino isn't that far. A couple of hours. Okay, do you have a question?
You want to go over there and get some? Really?
Maybe I'll wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
Play.
I mean,
I want to compliment you on your recipe for getting rid of. I have toxins in my jaw. I've gotten a hold of some mangoes down in the Imperial Valley that had god awful pesticides on them. And I ate them, and then my jaw I was pain for 2 days. I couldn't sleep. I had pain. And I went to your book, and there was this bee pollen recipe with the milk. I just took it, and then the thing was gone. Thank you.
You're welcome. And do you have a question too, please?
We want
recipe book.
The first no, we want to live.
You had a jaw pain?
Yeah, no, yeah. I think
it's under dental, I think.
Yes, under dental. I'm having a good time listening to all the questions. So
okay.
this is great.
Come up with one.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a little different question in terms of it's not really a toxin, but if you inhale fiberglass into your blood,
that's a terrible toxin.
You call it a toxin too?
It is a terrible toxin.
How do you handle that?
Not easily, because you have to understand it's put together with a resin, what do they call that?
Formaldehyde.
Well, formaldehyde is just one of the agents in it that they use, but there's an epoxy in it, because it's a plastic. Basically, it's a plastic. And you got phthalates, you got all kinds of toxins. And can you imagine eating plastic? That starts melting in your tissues. It's worse than cancer. I mean, it causes a lot of cancer. We have so much cancer. And the cancer is going to grow incredibly because people are wearing synthetic clothing, plastic clothing. And when you wear, polyester, any of those that aren't silk or wool or cotton, you're in trouble. Even if you have flax, or what is the hemp. It's a problem because you've got all these resins from the vegetable. You're breathing those are going to turn into a rock if they embed in your lungs or in your sinuses somewhere. Any of those are plastic, and you're going to have a pretty severe virus solvent to break it down. And what happens with all that toxicity? Where does it disperse? Everywhere in the system. Bacteria and parasites can't eat it. It's not on their diet. It will kill them instantly. So the amount of cancer that's going to, we're going to have by, 2015, 2017 is going to be astronomical because people have synthetic carpeting and synthetic bed sheets and bed covers and clothing. Everything in the household is toxic, and they're breathing this lint. I mean, let the sun shine through and see how much lint is traveling around for you taking a walk through your house one time. That lint, if it comes from your carpet or your couch or your clothes, that's how much you breathe in a day. Tremendous amount.
Is there anything to help break it down?
That's a difficult one. To experience that, I would have to have done some pretty severe damage with animals, and I wouldn't do it. So what I would suggest is probably using some, olive oil to help break it down. But, no more than 2 tablespoons a day with a meat meal. But you've got to have butter and or cream with it.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. I kind of made an observation recently. I don't know but it's just like a partial observation. I don't know if you've observed the same thing. Particularly like among older athletes, not younger athletes. I've noticed that guys that like run a lot or bicycle, they don't look so good. Like they look kind of gaunt and lean. Whereas, I saw a picture of Sylvester Stallone. He's like 56 and he works out with weights. He actually looked good. But I don't know if, he was actually healthier, but
He is healthier. He eats raw eggs and eats raw chicken.
Oh, really?
He won't advertise. When I worked right before Rocky came out, he and his wife used to shop in the health food store I worked in. And I substituted for a friend of mine who had to go on vacation or have a heart surgery. So he was out for a couple of months. So I worked there, and Sasha, his wife, came in. And, we talked about what he ate.
Wow.
And he was eating lots of raw eggs and chicken, lots of raw chicken.
But I noticed just guys who muscle builders or weightlifters, to see pictures of them, they do look better than runners. Is that because they eat differently?
Your runners and your bicyclers believe they have to be really lean.
Okay.
So they have no fat and got no lubrication in their bodies, so they're drying out inside. So they're becoming cirrhotic, like multiple sclerosis.
Whereas your weightlifters, they actually try and put on weight. So they eat lots of
weightlifters have to be fat. You see, all your weightlifters are fat. Your bodybuilders aren't fat. They're lean and cut.
Yeah.
But they still have fat in their tissue.
Yeah.
But your weightlifters, you can see they're all fat. You don't see one lean weightlifter. You've got to have fat to do it.
So basically the difference is not the type of exercise, it's just the diet then.
It's the diet. Yeah. Those bicyclers, I've had a few of them. And runners, Oh, I have to eat high carbs,
Oh, yeah.
And eat high carbs, and it turns in, when you're making a fat from a carb, it's an acetone that, has very poor strength to it, very little calories in it. The fat, molecule of fat has 2.5 calories. A molecule of acetone made from a carb has about 1. So it has less than, half of the energy producing in those.
Okay.
You just see a lot of your athletes suck eggs, raw eggs.
Really?
Bodybuilders and things like that. They do. It was back when I was a kid, all the bodybuilders were throwing 5, 6, 8 eggs into a milkshake. Everything else was pasteurized and cooked, except for the fruit that they would put in it and the eggs. But they used to have protein powder on top of that, which is garbage. But they'd eat all these eggs, and they would suck all, quart half of it at a time. So it wouldn't work out. Yeah.
It's just related to that. How do you explain Lance Armstrong?
How do I explain what?
Explain Lance Armstrong. Because, he had major cancer in his brain and other parts of his body. And he supposedly underwent chemotherapy and went on to win.
He was one of those bodies that just was able to turn it all around and make good of it.
So
Adapt
you don't
and
know
handle.
any details about him, really?
Pardon?
You don't really know any details?
Yeah, I read something about it, but it all had to do with his body, not what he did. Of course, they love to flaunt him out. And he's the only person like that in the world. And you don't make that a person, only one person out of the world who reacts that way. You don't want to try to be like him, because if there's only one in 4.5 billion people, that's not the one guy you want to emulate.
But they advertise with
Oh, they push him. Oh, yeah, because then the medical profession takes credit for it.
If you want to
That's a sad situation. This is the way to do it. Yeah. But he's the only one surviving that kind of severe treatment. Do you have a question?
Yes. I notice when I use the cream or butter that's been kind of like a little too sour, it has that kind of bitterness to it, that it makes me really kind of irritable and it'll make me look really tired, I'll get like these puffy circles under my eyes, and it'll actually make my hair sometimes it seems like a little bit grayer. What is it doing when do you know?
Well, you're already having the bacteria, the Bulgarius, is already breaking down the fats, predigesting it. And when you have predigested fats like that, you can do a lot of detoxification with it. See, any cream and butter that's fresher and that has a balance of Bulgaris, Caucasus, and Acidophilus working in it, it won't concentrate on one particular kind of toxicity. But once the Bulgarius is the major bacteria that's breaking down the fats in it, then that's an excessive amount of a particular type of solvent that can be utilized. And the body has a tendency sometimes when it's like that not to utilize it to build the body, but to make solvents to dissolve toxins. That's why I don't like Mark feeding his cows this crappy garbage, like the rice bran, because he's trying to save a buck. And he blames it on bacteria. That's such bullshit. I just hate that when people think that everybody's stupid. We owned a dairy. My grandparents owned a dairy. The bacteria was sky high. We never had sour milk. Unless the cows were out, we missed a couple of patches of thistle. And they ate that thistle, that cream was sour the next day. But it wasn't sour every day. It's what you feed the cow.
So he's not giving them just organic pasturing?
No, well, he'll feed them organic rice bran. And organic rice bran has, he did this last year, and we told him, don't do that. It's got gibberellic acid in it, and will turn the milk bitter. But he gets cheap. He's cutting corners. Well, he just stopped it again last week, so we had good cream last week, because he started losing money. And the only way we can hurt him is to stop buying his cream and use other cream.
There's no other cream out there.
Yes, there was. We had the Pennsylvania cream.
You mean the red top?
Yeah.
But that's not organic.
It's pretty close to it.
It is.
But it's raw. Yeah. It's pretty close to organic, too. So,
I should throw out the cream that I bought the time before. It's no good.
Well, I wasn't able to eat it.
I mean, it's no good. I should.
Yeah, I just mix it with water and put it in with my compost heap.
So,
just throw it away.
That's what I did.
Besides not buying it, he needs feedback as far as like all the people that stop. Or I guess maybe that's the best feedback for him.
That's the best feedback. You heard his pocketbook, and he changes what he does.
So throw it out.
We had to do it twice that way. James rejected his cream for 4 weeks. Wasn't it 4 weeks?
Did he admit last week then that he was feeding rice bran?
No. I know what it tastes like.
He just wrote it.
I know what it tastes like.
I just wondered if he admitted it.
No, he won't admit it. He said it was some bacteria. let me tell you, when my grandparents produced the milk, some of that bacteria was 10,000 parts, bacteria, per gram.
I didn't know.
Intense about a bacteria. Nobody ever got sick. Such garbage.
What are you
But that
supposed
was when it was raw milk.
When I started this diet and started eating the milk, I was having a lot of gas problems, which was kind of a carryover from the pasteurized milk. When you
Right.
pasteurized, I made gas like crazy. When I started, it was
Well,
still
not
having
only
gas.
that, milk pulls a lot of chemicals out of the body like eggs. And when those chemicals come in and mix with your digestive juices, it causes gas.
Right, but what happened was, like a week after I had the milk, and there was I had 2 bottles, and one was in the fridge for a little while. So it started to turn a little bit, and it got actually pretty solid. But when I drank that, after that, I've been perfect. No more gas. No matter whether the milk is fresh or a little bit sour, or no more gas.
Your body was able to utilize the bacteria.
But now, I needed that to shift it. I found.
Is it okay to use the organic chemistries?
Well, I wasn't able to eat it because I'm so light right now. I'm still going through the detox. I couldn't eat it. It was causing me headaches.
What should I do?
So I couldn't eat this cream.
So what do you do with it? Just spill it out? I bought the
What did I
bottle.
just say that I did?
Oh, you
I
fed
mix mine with water and put it in the soil.
But what
My
about
compost.
in air
You can
one?
do whatever you want to do.
No, I mean the air one. They have the plastic cream bottles. Are you allowed to buy those?
Yeah, just take it out of the plastic when you get it home.
Yeah, right. I mean it's okay for this week.
Fine if you want.
No, it's not.
Do you have a question?
Fungus on my fingers, you know what it looks like?
99% of the time when I did skin scrapings on people who had fungus in their hands, it was antibiotic related. I always found tetracycline, mostly penicillin.
So it's my body's trying to.
Just discard. Your body will, because that's a mold. Penicillin was a mold. It was antibiotics and molds. So then the body produces its own molds to help break those down, to eliminate them.
I noticed it after I had a manicure about 2 years ago that it broke out after I had the manicure. Does that have something to do with it?
Well, it could, because that chemical that they use, in fact, 3 of their chemicals are pretty potent, and they can cause a lot of tissue damage underneath, even to the bone, and that molds can work on that too.
Is that related to the penicillin?
No, that would be the 1% that people are having it from cosmetic stuff. Or I've also seen it in mechanics. I don't get that many mechanics, but I've had maybe 5 mechanics in 30 years. And when I did scrapings on their hands, with their mold, it was all solvent related. In fact, we found the compounds of brake fluid were the worst.
So it flares up off and on, and that's it's something.
Yeah. Well, you can put your primal facial body care cream on it, and that'll help reduce the damage.
When I was cutting jalapeno, it got in there.
Burn.
Yeah, I guess I have to get it. There's nothing I can do.
Yeah, you can coat your hands. When I had that problem, I coated my hands with butter. Now I use private facial body care cream. It's even better. And then you cut your food up. Yeah. No such thing as short questions. Frank, do you have a question? No question? Okay, back to.
I do have a question. I'm going to have mercury taken out of my teeth in about a week.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything that I should eat, like eat pollen and milk before and after?
It depends. Are you going to let them give you Novocaine?
I don't know. I shouldn't take Novocaine.
I had 16 teeth drilled in 1978, 4 hours one morning, 4 hours the next morning, with no Novocaine.
Oh my God.
What happens is the pain comes when the bit gets hot. So I had a signal. Anytime that bit started getting warm, I tapped the dentist's elbow. And he'd stop and let that bit cool down. Or he'd stick it in water and cool it.
I don't think I'm that brave.
Yeah, they take them.
Yeah.
They have water coming out of those pits.
Pardon?
But if I do take Novocaine, what?
You better suck a lot of eggs. I had that. I had, what I suggest for surgeries in the first book. Eating eggs. About at least 6, 8 a day, 9 a day, 10 a day, 12 a day for 9 days before the surgery, and then that many after the surgery. Lots and lots of eggs and honey and butter. Bee pollen can be helpful. But you're going to need that more for after. Yeah, but just remember that Novocaine is a pretty toxic drug. There's somebody in here that's having facial. Kimberly, she left. And that's when I did some skin scrapings on some people that had constant facial rashes. There was Novocaine compound in that tissue. And a lot of people who have abscesses in their teeth, predominantly Novocaine discharge. Some, about 15% of the time it was just deteriorated nerve cells in and around the tooth that may have been caused by, mercury filling, because there was mercury, a small amount of mercury found in other heavy metals that were in the silver filling, the amalgams. But mostly the discharge had Novocaine in it. And the new one they have, I forget what, Procaine or something like that, it's worse. Xylocaine. It's worse. I find more molecules of that. I found more molecules of that when I found it in pus than I did Novocaine. So they say it's better for home. It's like the pharmaceutical company can just say anything they want just to sell a product. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
They don't use lactic gas anymore. I remember when I was a child, I had a tooth pulled out.
Nitrous oxide.
Yeah.
So many people have heart attacks with it, but they're afraid to use it. Some people go into comas from it. So it's more dangerous for the anesthesiologist and the other doctors involved. So they don't like to use it. Okay, so I covered everybody's question. Well, what time is it? Yeah, we don't have I don't even know how to. It's what?
12 to 5.
Okay, so we have 12 more minutes. We're going to go around again.
I have one here.
Oh, all right.
In the green beverage in your book, the recipe book, it's with zucchini or other summer squash or the parsley. I don't really like it. First, I force myself to drink it, and the last I
The parsley or the zucchini?
Parsley and the zucchini.
You don't like either?
No, I don't like either.
Well, then just raise the celery to 95% and put the parsley at 5%.
So my question actually is that if something I reject so much, does that mean it's not good for my body?
It may mean you're having too much of it.
Okay.
But I'm sure that you need some parsley. So
I use cilantro is okay. So,
cilantro causes heavy metal detox. So don't use more than 5% of your juice. Well, it creeps up on you, and when it gets you, it's not easy to get out of the metal detox.
Oh, really? So I didn't see any symptom right away?
It may sneak up on you, and once it hits, I'm warning you, don't do it. Don't do over 5% of your juice.
What is 5%? Yeah, and
depends on the quantity that you're eating. If you're having 100 ounces of juice, that means 5 ounces would be, cilantro. You're having, like I had 96 ounces in a 3-day period, I'd have 4 1/4 ounces of cilantro to make 5%.
It's about the zucchini. Because I don't like the zucchini and other squash, I use cucumber instead.
That's fine.
Cucumber is fine because in your book you say occasionally cucumber. I don't know what's the reason.
Well, because cucumber sometimes cools the body too much.
What will I feel if that happens?
You get cold too easily. Then it doesn't affect you that way, so.
Okay, so that's fine. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
I've been on the bride for 8 years, I say 70, 80%, she's raising on bread and my life. But basically what I'm getting is every joint in my body.
You're much too thin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You have no reserve fats to help pull the poisons out when like viruses work. So they make everything sore. That's what I said earlier. If you have toxins that are in the joints and they're deteriorating tissue, and you have bacteria that's eating that deteriorated tissue, yes, it can be that. But if you had arthritis, you'd be in severe pain.
Well, it's pretty painful, especially in the morning.
You just need to eat a lot of fat, especially butter. And, you have no more than 50% red meat at a time with white meat, and they should be eaten together.
Okay. I've been eating red meat, but I'm told I have liver.
Well, you do.
Yeah.
But, you see that the darkness around your eyes.
What about MSM? Like MSM?
MSM is a chemical.
And sulfur, isn't it?
Yeah, well, what the sulfur do in the body, it dries it out. That's why MSM works. It destroys nerve tissue, so you lose the symptoms. Not because you're curing anything, it's because you're drying out the nerves and they no longer have impulse.
One of the things I did, I tried to took away the pain with enzymes. If I took enzymes on your stomach, it would take the pain away.
Well, that's a chemical way to do it. Yeah, but still, what that does, remember that no enzymes are active unless the pancreas realigns them. So in your raw food, fresh food, you have enzymes that are all easily disassembled and reassorted. And so what the supplements, those enzyme supplements seem to do is kick ass on the pancreas. So beats the pancreas to make it work. Because the pancreas has to do with all enzymes. So it isn't that it does it in a healthful way. It causes more toxicity. And tomatoes are good. Tomatoes and cream together are better for joint pain.
Just to review, the remedy for any joint pain is 50% less meat combo of red and white.
No, that's arthritis. For some reason, red meat has a tendency to cause an over-acid condition with people with arthritis. But other pain,
other
kind of joint pain, it's not associated with the bacteria. It doesn't seem to be affected. If you've got a virus in the joints, reducing the meat and red meat will be okay.
Okay.
Why that is, I don't know. That's just experimentation. That's what I've done.
Okay.
I didn't create the world. I just studied it.
Okay, so back to the hot water then in that case.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
The more you cough, you can't have any red meat.
And also the pain formula and honey butter mixture also help.
I mean, the coughing, as long as it lasts, if be 6 months, you don't eat red meat.
No, I didn't say that.
Well,
Cough, what's that got to do with it?
Well, you said you're taking a cough as you would a cold, a cough.
Cold or flu.
Cold or flu. So you're not supposed to eat red meat.
I didn't say you're not supposed to eat red meat. I just said there's a time you should eat mostly white meat. That doesn't mean if it lasts for 6 months that you do it only that time. Maybe if a cold normally lasts 3 to 5 days and the flu lasts from a day to 14 days, that's when you want to concentrate on that. But if you've got a chronic cough, it has nothing to do with a cold or flu.
Oh, so you could eat red meat after 2 weeks.
Then you know it's not a flu anymore, it's not a cold.
Yeah.
Okay, folks.
Short question. Now that they have the milk in the plastic jar, does it really have problems with milk?
Yes, it does. And he'll claim that it doesn't, but I can taste the difference. There's, when they make the jar, the plastic container, it has a film on it that they keep, from sticking in the pressing. And you know, it may be just a tiny bit, but it gets into the milk. It doesn't damage me or harm me. It just takes up some of the fat in the milk, you know, so I don't get to utilize it. And it changes the taste. Pardon?
It's better to ask you to buy it to the
Absolutely. I put everything in jars. I don't leave anything in plastic. Because I take my milk and cream out, you know, refrigerate it and let them sit for a couple of days. You know, there's a high bacteria in it. I'm not going to let it sit in plastic.
So that cream
As
that
long as it's refrigerated, it's not going to be a big deal. But I tell everybody not to eat any milk that's refrigerated, whole.
But that cream that we can get now is going to be okay. You're saying, and Air one, if they deliver it on Tuesday, Monday night he delivers it, the cream.
You mean in plastic?
Yeah.
As long as it's refrigerated, it's going to be okay.
You bring it home and you first and take it.
You can still get it, James, in the glass bottle.
Yes.
When is it coming in the glass, you know?
Only a James.
I know, but you know when?
It came in last week.
I always saw the plastic there.
I got the glass, and there was plenty. There were cases and cases of it. And I got there at what time? I didn't get there until, what, 2 o'clock? 2:30? There was plenty.
Just look for it.
I don't really have a question about a specific ailment, but I'm just watching the diet
But it's only if I get the
different areas
plastic.
of my body, you know, at different times. And the question is kind of good to just eat the diet and let the body timing unfold. And I'll have different things happen at different times, but just eating the diet consistently will be the best thing. I don't need to do something specific, have this combination.
Well, if you have a certain ailment, it'll help you to have the things I've suggested.
For those things. But I'm just saying, in general, the diet is going to allow the body's timing to cleanse whatever it is when it can. Like, for example, the first 3 days, I had major metal taste in my mouth. That's just there. Now it's less.
No, maybe it had to do with the diet or not. Because people who are not doing the diet have that same experience. However, I found that people who are not on this diet detoxify anywhere from 18 to 20% of the population is in a detoxification. On this diet, it's only 8 to 12.
I don't understand what was the point?
Take all the population out there, and they're in detoxification 18 to 20% of the time.
Okay.
People on the diet are only in detoxification over the whole majority, 8 to 12% of the time.
They're detoxing less because they have less, the toxins are moved quicker?
Because they're not dealing with all the toxicity that they're eating constantly.
Well, but we're still in the period of time where we're rebuilding our bodies.
It'll be 40 years.
Right, I know, but I'm just saying, I mean, that from what you said. But,
yeah, well, so it's about half of what they're.
Right.
But that's because we're not poisoning ourselves with those toxins. And there are 30 varieties of toxins that we've identified that I stated in the recipe book, in the back pages. Those are only the ones we identify. And your body has to deal with that much toxicity all the time.
I'm not thinking like I want to hurry this up or do something special. I don't need to do any of those. Just let it.
Yeah, that's what I suggest. I'm going to, for those people who are antsy and want to push it, I'm going to suggest how to detoxify the body and cause detoxification. But like I'm going to say, like I said to everybody here, don't push it.
Right.
It's not, you're going to tablespoon an ounce, 2 tablespoons a day, you're going to do it. Don't do 3 cups a day like I did, Kick your butt. I have no ass. You know me, I've had a big ass all my life. It just took all of it away. In like 2 weeks, my whole butt was gone. Of course, that's where I got an awful lot of injections. The majority of my injections were back there. So I'm sure that I had a big butt, probably because it was mostly toxic. But I still like that butt because the girls like it. I don't have it anymore.
If I have to, I'll get it in plastic to create it.
Take it out of plastic. Take it out of plastic, yeah. Okay, folks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.